Today in the studio I'm going to be working on this Japanese white pine. It was imported from Japan a couple of years ago, and when I first got offered this tree for sale I turned it down because I thought it was fairly ugly. A few months later I still thought it was fairly ugly, but I decided to accept the challenge and purchase it so that I could do something with it. At one point in its life it's definitely been a much larger tree. The trunk here, single trunk, would have come up to maybe about 1 metre tall or so. It's obviously died back at some point in time, I'm not sure why, and then what we've got left is basically what is probably used to be a sort of a low branch or a couple of low branches which are now forming the entire part of this tree. So there's a couple of strange things about it. We've got to try and decide where the front of this tree is going to be and how we're going to restart it going forward. The worst feature on this tree really is the deadwood. Not particularly the fact it has deadwood, but the fact that it is in such poor condition. And we've been referring to this pine as the Beaver pine while it's been here on the nursery because it looks like it's been carved by a beaver. I think a beaver could probably do a better job than this. Yeah? It's been very roughly done. So we've got to address that. Now, I did quite a lot of carving here on bonsai, probably more than people realise, but even then we really only carve stuff if we think it adds to the style of the tree and it gives the tree some merit, and also if it's sort of telling a story and making it look more dramatic. I tend not to do carving just for the sake of doing carving. You know, a lot of people, it's quite easy to work on pines and junipers and evergreens, and people seem to think if you've got one of those trees it's got to have an area of deadwood on it, and it needn't. You can just have the beauty of the tree. But it can enhance a tree, it can enhance several trees depending on the image that we're trying to create. So this has got pretty poor carving round here. It's not right down to the base of the trunk. There's a little bit of bark here at the base. So you can see it's calloused in on this side. So this has been done, and then this has started to roll in and repair itself. So this is a good few years old, this carving, I would say. And then up here we've basically got all the tree, look, just coming off this section here. Back round this side there's a couple of protruding gins that would have been branches. The top of this is quite thick, a bit chunky, so that wants a dressing. These probably want a dressing. I'm not always a fan of gins sticking out. These are quite thick and stumpy. The one on this side as well is quite lumpy as well. So they want a dressing. You can see it, the callus on this side is very good as well. The deadwood through here has actually got some quite nice aged sections, but we're probably going to redo all this deadwood and probably going to take off some of this bark and bring it down into here so that we don't have the bark and then we've got a sort of a line where the deadwood starts. That's a little bit strange, so we're going to do something with that. So we've had this tree a number of months. I've had a couple of people wanting to buy it, and I've said it's not for sale until I work on it, because I do get enjoyment out of working on trees and hopefully enhancing them and making them look better. The front of this tree is a little bit strange. Let me come around here and we'll see what we're looking at. Now, because it's all coming off one section up in here, yeah, you see the structure of the tree. If I lean it back, we've got a branch coming off here, this one's coming this way, and then this section's coming up, and there's a heavy section here and it splits just here. So the front of this tree, if you were going to keep this on first inspection, a front in here with this as an apex would work. Maybe this could be brought up a little bit more to gain us a little bit of height on the top of the tree. So if you did that, for instance, the front of this would be sort of in here. If I mark that with a piece of wire, so that is a possible front, maybe a little bit more round to the left, somewhere like that. So a lot of people look at this tree and think, oh, that's a good front, and potentially it is. When you look at the tree, this could be brought down on this right hand side, the top board up a little bit, something swept down here, would look quite reasonable. The only disadvantage with that, potentially, is that you see the bark, but you don't see any of the deadwood. Now, somebody that's going to buy this tree is obviously somebody that likes a good deadwood feature on a tree. So it's strange that if you pick a front where you don't see any of it, it's a little bit weird. So potentially, I was thinking about having a front in here more, potentially in here, so that you can see you've got the beautiful aged bark on the left and transitioning over to the deadwood on the right. But can you see this line again is quite static? This deadwood isn't flowing down this side of the tree. It just appears from here. So I think this deadwood, if it wants to come down and flow into this right hand side, this would also help to give a bit more direction to the tree. The trouble with doing that is then we've got the apex, the tallest part of the tree, right over here. We're going to do this video in a couple of stages. The first stage, we're going to address the deadwood. I'll tell you about the tree, we're going to address the deadwood and do some work with that. And then the second stage, we're going to wire the foliage. So potentially I was looking here, and we've got some good strong branches here on the right we could pull down, but this one going up to the left, which we could use from round here, from this front, it's too far over, it make it out of balance. Now the other thing we could do, you could tilt it a little bit this way, which makes this a better top, but then you lose the movement in the trunk. You're better off having movement in this trunk a little bit from right to left. But up in here, I noticed there was a branch just there that's coming off that back section, and potentially I could use this as a new top. That's quite an exciting branch, because I could bring that in here. If I lift it and then bring it down like this, I'm wondering about having an apex here, bringing this section down and getting rid of a lot of this heaviness, this lumpiness that's out of balance. Because an aged tree like this in nature that's survived harsh climates with deadwood on, if we're telling that sort of story that it's been growing on a cliff and it's had bad weather and it's an aged tree, we don't want all this bushy, vibrant growth. I want to look like it struggled a little bit. It will just tell a better story. So potentially we can remove some of this lump on this side. So what we're going to do, we'll start off by doing a little bit of carving. And like I said, these gins at the base, you know, I think this one in particular interrupts the flow up the tree. So I think I'm going to remove this one and this one to get a better line up that right hand side, and probably carve this one back to make a hole here rather than a protruding. This looks like you've sharpened it with a pencil sharpener, so that's not really very attractive, these lower ones here. So we'll address that. So we'll make a start on doing a little bit of the carving. Okay, we're going to attempt to carve this deadwood, and we're going to use a Makita cordless die grinder with a little bonsai carving attachment in. There's several different versions of this on the market. It's got tungsten cutting buckets on, 2 on this one. It's quite a small head, about 10mm across. And then we'll probably follow up after that with like a Dremel type or Dremel size tool with a similar cutter. This has got 3 cutting buckets on with an actual triangle shape, give you a bit more of an edge. And we've got a few wide bush attachments and bits and bobs we can use. So we'll make a start with it, and we're going to be working with this sort of front in here and bring this carving down on this right hand side, get rid of these lumpy gins and these, and then try and get some movement and detail in this section here, particularly around the back. It's particularly really not very good, so we'll see if we can get some flow and some movement to start this on its way and looking more sensible. Okay.
fancy crop, but have faith in the ones who notice. But now they got to slow them, 'cause I can't deal with the rules. No way, not to prove them wrong. Show them who is the fool. Yes, I say, oh, I say slow them, slow them,
So we've had the first pass of carving with a Makita with a carving bit in it, and I've taken away these two gins on this left hand side because some more work to do on them. We've brought this carving section deadwood down to the base, still a little bit more of bark to come off here. We've worked our way up the tree here and put some depth into this trunk, carved some holes through, got some depth in there. There's still more work to do around this back edge. Up at the top of the tree, we've whittled this down to more of a point. Not sure if I keep this bit, that might come off. So we've just started doing the first pass of carving with that. I think what we'll do now is we'll move on to a more precise tool, the smaller head, and we'll do a few passes with this to put a little bit more detail and get into some of these little nooks and crannies. So we'll have a clean down, charge our batteries up, and we'll be good to go again for a few minutes. So we've done the first pass of carving on this side. Now, carving is quite subjective to most people. Some people don't like it, some people like it, some people like different types of carving. Me personally, I like my carving to look quite craggy. What I don't want is it to be too smooth. I think, to me, if it's too smooth and too white, it doesn't look so natural. So I want to make this as craggy as I can, and what I want to do, rather than just whiten it all with lime sulphur, I want to do something a little bit different to get a more natural colour, and I'm going to darken these low sections by using a little circular cutter on a Dremel to try and darken them and smoke them out a little bit. I'll show you in a section up here, same section here, what I mean. Okay, so it's the end of the day here now at Greenwood, and we're just wrapping up late on a Friday, and just thought I'd conclude this first session of the white pine. As we said earlier, this was a possible front. We've took these gins off, we've started to carve this section here. We've done it in several stages. You can see I've firstly mapped out the carving like this with Makita. We followed up with a finer Dremel tool and a little wire brush, and then we start to put some dark sections in here. And this will weather over time, so it'll become less. There'll be less contrast, but there'll still be contrast there. On this particular tree, I like the cragginess of this carving. I think it's a fine line when you're carving things like this, because in the UK we've got quite a wet climate, so you can do too much detail. You can carve a lot of detail in. It looks great on a video, it looks great in an article, it looks great for a year or so. But deadwood, maintaining it in the UK for 10 years or so is quite a big ask. So you've got to be careful, I believe, that if you go too detailed too soon, then in 10 years time you haven't got the wood there to then perhaps reassess it and do another lot of carving for another stage. So I want to put some detail into it without being too fine and delicate. Obviously, if you're in a warmer climate, drier climate, then no doubt you can carve deadwood and maintain it well for 20 to 30 years. But I found from my experience here in the UK, it does need readdressing every 10 years or so, about every decade. So what we've done, we've started from the base, putting in these dark accents. I'm burning them into the wood here. This was all deadwood anyway. So, like I say, it will tone down, as with any carving. When it's first done, it can always look a little bit stark. But we're halfway up the tree now, so what we'll do over the next few days when I get time, I'll continue to carve and do the detail on this upper section. And then if you tune in a week or so, we'll have part 2 of this tree with the carving completed, and then we're going to start working on the branches. So you don't miss that, please subscribe to our channel so that you'll get part 2, you'll get a heads up when part 2 is available. Check out our other videos, and if you've enjoyed this, give us a like. If you haven't enjoyed it, don't bother giving us a dislike. See you next time, take care.